He visited an ancient ship every week, until one day it reactivated him with a shocking message. There was something about the endless waves, the sound of water hitting rocks, and the salty breeze that made him feel calm and alive at the same time. On one bright Saturday morning, he packed his small backpack with his camera, notebook, and some snacks, and decided to explore a part of the coast he had never visited before. He had heard stories from the locals about strange ships that had washed ashore many years ago, but most of these tales seemed like legends to him. Still, the curiosity inside him was too strong to ignore. Walking along the sandy cliffs, Ethan could see the sunlight reflecting off the water, creating tiny sparks that danced like diamonds on the waves. The smell of salt mixed with the fresh morning air made him take deep breaths, feeling more awake than he had in weeks. He walked for hours, following the edge of the cliffs, sometimes slipping on wet rocks, sometimes stopping to take photos of seagulls that flew above him in perfect circles. It was during one of these stops, when he leaned over a rocky ledge, that he saw it, a dark shape lying low in the shallow water. At first, he thought it was a big piece of driftwood, maybe some old boat debris that had been carried by the waves. But as he got closer, his eyes widened. It was a ship, not just any ship. It looked ancient, like it had sailed the seas decades ago, maybe even longer. The wood was dark and worn, and rust covered the metal parts that had once shined bright. Strange symbols were carved along the sides of the hull, patterns Ethan didn't recognize. He crouched down to get a closer look, running his fingers gently over the engravings. They were smooth in some places, rough in others, as if the ship had a story to tell through its surface. His heart began to race. How could something like this survive for so long, forgotten and left to the mercy of the sea? Ethan's curiosity was immediate. He wanted to explore every corner to know its history and maybe even understand who had built it and why. He circled the ship slowly, looking for a way inside. The wooden planks creaked under his weight, and the salty smell of the sea filled his nose. Even though it was clear that no one had stepped foot here in years, Ethan felt a strange familiarity, like he had known this ship all his life. He took out his camera and began snapping pictures, capturing every angle, every rusted detail, every mysterious engraving. After examining the exterior, he finally found a way in, a small opening at the back that seemed less damaged than the rest. Carefully, he squeezed himself through, feeling the dark wood beneath his hands and feet. Inside, the ship was quiet, except for the sound of water dripping from cracks above. The air was heavy with the smell of salt and old wood. As he stepped deeper inside, he realized the interior was more intact than he expected. There were benches, a small cabin, and even remnants of ropes and chains that must have been used to secure cargo or sails. It was like stepping back in time, into a world that had been frozen and forgotten. Ethan spent hours inside, sketching what he saw in his notebook. He drew the strange symbols, the layout of the ship, and even the small cabin that seemed to have been the captain's quarters. Each detail fascinated him more than the last. He imagined the people who had sailed this ship, their lives, their struggles, and the stories they could tell if they were still alive. He even gave the ship a name in his mind, the Silent Voyager. It seemed fitting for a ship that had been abandoned for so long yet still held a presence that made him feel connected. When the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ethan reluctantly climbed out of the ship. He stood on the sand for a moment, looking back at the vessel that had captured his imagination so completely. He knew he would return. This was not a one-time discovery, it was a new chapter in his life. The ship had a way of calling to him, a silent invitation that he couldn't resist. On his way home, he couldn't stop thinking about it. He made a promise to himself that he would visit every week, documenting everything he could and maybe, just maybe, uncovering the secrets that the ship had kept hidden for so long. The next Saturday, and every Saturday after that, Ethan returned. Each visit brought new discoveries. He noticed how the tide changed the way the ship rested in the sand, how the sunlight highlighted different engravings at different times of day, and how small animals sometimes made the ship their home. Every week he sketched, photographed, and wrote notes about what he observed. He even started a journal just for the ship, filling it with details, thoughts, and questions. He wondered about the captain, the crew, and the voyages they might have taken. It became more than a hobby. It became a personal connection to history, to a past that most people had forgotten. Sometimes, when he stayed late, he noticed strange things. The water near the ship would ripple even when there was no wind, and the ship itself seemed to hum softly, a sound so faint that he wasn't sure if it was real or just his imagination. At first, he brushed it off, thinking it was the sea playing tricks. But the feeling never left him. It was as if the ship had a life of its own, quietly observing him as he observed it. Ethan didn't feel afraid. Instead, he felt privileged, chosen somehow to witness this mystery firsthand. As weeks turned into months, Ethan's obsession with the ship grew. He began bringing small tools, hoping to carefully remove rust or clean sections of the engravings without damaging them. He learned to be gentle, respecting the age and fragility of the vessel. He also started researching old maritime records, trying to find any clue about the ship's origin. Most records were missing or incomplete, only adding to the mystery. The ship seemed to exist in a space between history and legend, real yet almost unreal in its presence. Even the locals began to notice his regular visits. Some were curious, others warned him to stop. "That ship is cursed," one fisherman said. "People who go near it don't come back the same." Ethan smiled politely and ignored their warnings. He didn't feel danger, he felt discovery. Every week, he would arrive at the ship, eager to explore a new corner, uncover a new detail, or simply sit quietly and absorb the atmosphere. He felt alive in a way that everyday life couldn't give him. One afternoon, as he traced the carvings along the hull, Ethan noticed something unusual. One of the symbols seemed different from the rest, almost glowing slightly in the sunlight. He touched it carefully, and for a brief moment he felt a vibration through his fingers as if the ship was responding. He pulled back quickly, unsure if it was real or a trick of the light. But the feeling lingered, a gentle pulse beneath his skin, reminding him that this ship was more than just wood and metal. It had a presence, a story, and perhaps even a secret waiting for him to uncover. By the end of that first year of weekly visits, Ethan had filled notebooks with sketches, notes, and observations. He had photographed every angle, studied the tide patterns, and mapped the ship in detail. Yet the more he learned, the more questions arose. Who built the ship? Why was it abandoned? What secrets did it hold beneath its deck? He had no answers, only a growing sense of anticipation. Something about the ship felt alive, as if it were waiting for him to understand something important. Ethan often stayed until sunset, watching the sky turn golden, pink, and finally deep blue. The ship seemed different at different times of day, changing with the light, the wind, and the tide. Each visit felt like a new adventure, a new opportunity to connect with history, with mystery, and with the silent presence of the ship. He had become part of its story, even if he didn't yet realize how much it would change his life. On the morning of his final visit of the year, Ethan sat on the sandy shore, looking at the ship quietly. He had grown attached in ways he didn't expect. It wasn't just a relic or a hobby anymore. It was a companion, a puzzle, and a friend in a way that few things in his life had ever been. He traced the carvings one last time, feeling the familiar pulse beneath his fingers, and whispered softly, "I'll be back next week. I promise." Little did he know, the ship had been waiting for him all along. And the connection he felt was only the beginning of something far greater, something that would soon break the boundaries between the past, the present, and the unknown. Ethan returned the next Saturday, as he had promised himself, carrying his notebook and camera. The air was cooler than usual, and a soft breeze blew across the shore, carrying the faint scent of seaweed and salt. As he approached the ship, he noticed the tide had shifted slightly. The water lapped closer to the hull than last week, and the sun reflected off the wet wood, making the ship glisten in a strange, almost magical way. Something about the sight made Ethan pause. It was as if the ship was welcoming him back. He shook off the feeling with a laugh. "It's just my imagination," he muttered, though deep inside, he felt that the ship had a presence he couldn't explain. Stepping aboard, Ethan moved carefully, noting that the boards creaked under his weight as if they were whispering under his feet. He went straight to the cabin he had come to think of as the captain's quarters. Dust covered every surface, but the sunlight streaming through the small, broken windows revealed hidden details. A small wooden chest tucked beneath the bed, ropes coiled neatly in a corner, and a faded map pinned to the wall with rusted tacks. He crouched to examine the chest. It was locked, but the wood was old and brittle. With gentle pressure, he pried it open and found a bundle of papers, yellowed with age. Carefully, Ethan unfolded the papers. They were pages from a logbook, written in neat but hurried handwriting. The words spoke of long journeys to distant islands, encounters with storms that seemed unnatural, and sightings of strange lights on the horizon. Some entries were chilling, describing how the crew felt watched as though the ship itself had eyes. Ethan's pulse quickened. He read aloud to himself, "We have entered waters unknown to any living map. The vessel responds to those who observe it. Only the chosen may see the path." He paused. The last sentence made him shiver. It was as if the writer had known someone like him would one day find this log. Ethan spent the next hour examining the pages, taking notes and photographs. Each entry seemed more mysterious than the last. One entry described a device hidden beneath the deck that hummed softly, even when the ship was still. Another spoke of strange carvings along the hull that seemed to glow faintly under moonlight. Ethan looked around the cabin, glancing at the carvings he had traced countless times. Could they really do that? Could the ship be alive in some way? The feeling of something watching him returned, stronger than before. He moved to the main deck and ran his hand over the hull, tracing the familiar symbols. For a brief moment, he felt a vibration under his fingertips, like a heartbeat. He pulled back in surprise, unsure if it was real or just his mind playing tricks. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the vibration came again. Ethan's eyes widened. This was no coincidence. The ship was responding to him. For the next few weeks, Ethan became more and more obsessed. Each visit revealed something new. A panel in the floor that he had never noticed before could be lifted, revealing old tools and mechanisms. Small pools of water inside the ship reflected light in unusual ways, creating patterns that seemed intentional. One day he found a small hatch in the cabin floor, almost invisible, that led to a narrow space beneath the ship. He crawled inside and discovered gears and levers, worn with age but still intact. His mind raced. How had this ship survived so long, and why did it seem to have a system that responded to him? Ethan also began noticing the ship behaving differently at different times of the day. In the morning, the carvings seemed dull, blending into the wood. By afternoon, they caught the sunlight in a way that made them shine faintly. At night, the hum returned, low and steady, almost like a whisper. He started recording these patterns with his camera and a small microphone, hoping to understand what triggered the ship's responses. Every observation deepened the mystery, making him more certain that the ship was more than it appeared. As the weeks passed, Ethan started dreaming about the ship. In these dreams, he walked along the deck at night, the water glowing faintly around him. The carvings shimmered, and whispers filled the air, speaking words he could not understand. Sometimes the dreams showed flashes of a crew working long ago, pulling ropes, adjusting sails, and studying strange instruments. He would wake up with a start, heart pounding, and rush to the ship to see if his dreams matched reality. Each time he discovered small details he had missed before, as if the ship had shared them with him while he slept. Ethan's friends noticed his obsession growing. He stopped spending time in cafes or at the library, choosing instead to devote every free hour to studying the ship. When they asked him why he was so consumed, he could only smile and shake his head. "It's not just a ship," he said. "There's something alive here. Something I need to understand." No one argued, though some exchanged worried glances. They did not know what to say about a man who talked to a broken ship as if it were a friend. One evening, as a storm approached, Ethan arrived at the ship before the clouds blocked the sun. The waves were rougher than usual, and the wind howled along the cliffs. Inside, the ship felt alive in a new way. The hum was louder, vibrating through the wood, and the floor beneath him felt firm and unyielding despite the water sloshing around it. He moved carefully across the deck, notebook in hand, noting every unusual movement. A small panel in the corner shifted slightly, revealing a faint blue light. Ethan crouched to examine it, realizing that the ship had activated some sort of mechanism on its own. He could see tiny gears moving inside, lights blinking as if in a sequence. Heart racing, he whispered to himself, "It's real. It's really alive." He reached out, almost afraid to touch it, and felt warmth radiating from the panel. A soft vibration ran up his arm, and a sense of calm washed over him, even as the storm raged around him. For the first time, he truly believed the logbook's words. The ship responded to those who observed it. It was waiting for him. Ethan began documenting everything meticulously. He made detailed sketches of the panel, the hidden gears, and the sequence of lights. He compared his notes with the logbook entries, searching for patterns. One evening, he noticed that the vibrations from the ship seemed to match certain symbols carved on the hull. A particular sequence of carvings vibrated when he touched them in a specific order. Excited, he recorded the sensation, wondering if he had stumbled upon a code or a key to the ship's deeper secrets. As the weeks went on, Ethan's visits became more intense. He would stay for hours, sometimes until the sun set completely, sketching, recording, and observing. The ship seemed to sense his attention, activating tiny mechanisms as if guiding him. One night he stayed after dark, lighting a small lantern inside the cabin. The shadows danced across the walls, and the hum grew stronger. He traced the carvings again, and the vibrations seemed to form a rhythm. Ethan pressed his hand against the wood and suddenly heard a faint whisper, almost like a voice carried on the wind. "Follow, observe, understand." It was barely audible, but it made his skin tingle. The discovery thrilled and terrified him at the same time. Ethan felt that the ship was alive, not in a human sense, but in a way that connected with him. It was as if the vessel itself had a consciousness, waiting for someone to recognize it, to communicate with it. He became careful to respect its responses, never forcing anything, always observing patiently. He felt he was part of a story much larger than himself, a story that had started long before he was born. Ethan also began noticing small signs that others did not. Tiny scratches on the deck shifted slightly when he returned each week. Small objects inside the cabin, tools, ropes, even papers, seemed to be slightly moved or repositioned. At first, he thought he was imagining it, but the changes were too consistent. The ship was moving in subtle ways when no one was watching, almost as if it were alive in secret. The realization made him both excited and cautious. He felt chosen somehow to witness this mystery firsthand. Months passed, and Ethan's bond with the ship deepened. It had become a part of his life, a secret world that only he could understand. Every Saturday he returned, eager to see what the ship would reveal next. Each visit brought new discoveries: a hidden compartment, a flicker of light, a faint vibration, or a dream that mirrored the ship's logbook. The line between reality and imagination blurred, but Ethan didn't care. He had found something extraordinary, something that made him feel alive in a way nothing else could. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan stood on the deck, looking out at the waves. The wind was calm, the water reflecting the pink and orange sky. The hum of the ship was soft but steady, a rhythm that seemed to speak to him. He ran his hand along the carvings, feeling the faint vibration beneath his fingertips. "I'll keep observing," he whispered. "I'll keep learning from you." For a moment, the world seemed to pause, the ship and he connected in a silent understanding. He did not yet know the ship's full secrets, but he knew that this bond would lead him to discoveries he could never have imagined. Ethan left the ship that night with a sense of anticipation. The next visit would bring something new, he could feel it. The ship had chosen him as its observer, and he was ready to continue the journey, following every clue, every vibration, and every whisper it shared. What lay ahead was unknown, mysterious, and perhaps even dangerous, but Ethan welcomed it. He was part of something extraordinary, and he could no longer imagine life without the ancient vessel waiting for him on the shore. Ethan arrived at the shore earlier than usual that Saturday. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of salt and seaweed, and the waves lapped gently at the base of the cliffs. He had a strange feeling in his chest as he approached the ship, a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. Something told him today would be different. Over the past months, he had observed countless details, taken endless notes, and studied every inch of the vessel. He felt close to understanding its secrets, yet he also sensed that the ship had been preparing for this moment, waiting for him to arrive. As he stepped onto the deck, he noticed the subtle changes immediately. A panel that had always remained stationary shifted slightly under the rising sun, as though it had moved on its own. Tiny lights flickered along the edges of the hull, catching his eyes in a pattern he did not recognize. Ethan froze for a moment, holding his breath. He had seen hints of activity before, small vibrations or whispers, but nothing like this. The ship seemed alive in a new way, alert, aware, and ready to reveal something important. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he moved toward the captain's cabin. The logbook was there, exactly where he had left it, but he noticed something new. A small, intricately carved box had appeared next to it. He had never seen it before, and it seemed almost as though it had materialized overnight. The carvings on the box were similar to the symbols on the hull, but more detailed, more precise. He hesitated before touching it, sensing that this was no ordinary discovery. Gathering courage, he lifted the lid carefully, revealing a small, folded piece of paper. The paper was old, fragile, and yellowed, yet the writing on it was remarkably clear. Ethan unfolded it slowly, his heart pounding. The message was cryptic but urgent. "You are chosen. The vessel awakens for you. Follow the signs. Your understanding is required." "Do not hesitate." His eyes widened. The handwriting did not match the logbook entries. It was neat, deliberate, almost as if the message had been waiting for him all along. He read it over and over, trying to comprehend the meaning. Was the ship truly alive? Was it sending him a message? And if so, what was he supposed to do with it? As he absorbed the words, a vibration pulsed through the floor beneath him. It was stronger than anything he had felt before, a rhythmic hum that seemed to move through his entire body. The lights along the hull brightened, casting shadows across the deck, and the air felt charged, electric. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He had no doubt now, the ship was reactivating. It was responding directly to him, communicating in a way he had only sensed before. The realization filled him with awe and fear at the same time. Ethan tried to stay calm. He recorded the vibrations with his microphone, sketching the patterns of light on the deck and documenting everything in his notebook. Every observation seemed to match something in the logbook, but at the same time it felt entirely new, entirely alive. The ship was not just a relic of the past. It was a vessel of knowledge, waiting for someone to awaken it, and that someone was him. Suddenly, the hum intensified, vibrating through the walls of the cabin. Panels shifted, revealing hidden compartments and mechanisms he had never noticed before. One of the panels slid open slowly, almost as if guided by an invisible hand, revealing a small device made of metal and glass. Ethan approached cautiously, noticing intricate engravings that glowed faintly in the morning light. The device emitted a soft, pulsing glow, and the vibrations grew stronger when he got closer. It was as though the ship had activated this mechanism specifically for him. Ethan reached out to touch the device. The moment his fingers brushed the metal, a sudden flash of light filled the cabin. For an instant, he felt disoriented, as if he were floating between the deck and something else entirely. Then, the light dimmed, and a holographic-like figure appeared before him. Ethan stumbled back, unable to believe his eyes. The figure was a man dressed in the attire of a long-forgotten captain. His face was stern yet calm, his eyes fixed on Ethan with intensity. The voice was clear, though it sounded slightly distorted, like it came through the waves themselves. "Observer," the figure said, "you have been chosen to understand what was hidden. The vessel awakens because you are ready. Pay attention, for the knowledge it carries is vital. The coordinates you see are not for exploration. They are a warning. Only the chosen may act." Ethan's mind raced. He tried to speak, but no words came out. The figure continued, pointing toward a set of coordinates etched into the deck below his feet. Numbers and letters glowed faintly in the wood, as though the ship itself had carved them. Ethan grabbed his notebook and began copying them frantically. The figure nodded once, then slowly began to fade, leaving Ethan alone with the ship, the device, and the glowing coordinates. He sank to the deck, his heart pounding. For months, he had felt a connection to this vessel, but now he understood the weight of that connection. The ship was more than alive, it was intelligent, aware, and it had chosen him to carry a message of importance. Ethan felt a mixture of fear, responsibility, and exhilaration. He had always sought adventure, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. The ship was no longer just a mystery, it was a call to action. Ethan spent the next several hours studying the device and the glowing coordinates. The patterns of light shifted, forming shapes and symbols that seemed to correspond with the carvings on the hull. He experimented carefully, touching different parts of the device and observing the response. Each action triggered vibrations, lights, or whispers, as if the ship were guiding him toward understanding. He realized that this was a form of communication, an interface between him and the vessel. The ship was teaching him, slowly, deliberately, without overwhelming him. Outside, the storm he had noticed earlier began to pick up. Rain pelted the deck, and waves crashed against the hull, but Ethan barely noticed. He was completely absorbed in the ship's reactivation, documenting every detail and trying to decipher the patterns. He had learned over the months to respect the ship, to observe patiently, and now that respect was being rewarded. The vessel was revealing secrets that had remained hidden for decades, secrets that had chosen him as the witness. As night fell, Ethan lit a small lantern inside the cabin, casting a warm glow on the logs, carvings, and device. The pulsing vibrations grew stronger, synchronizing with the patterns he had been observing. He pressed his hand against the hull, feeling a deep resonance that seemed to connect him to the ship in ways he could not explain. It was as if the vessel was alive not just in wood and metal, but in some energy that transcended time and space. He felt its awareness, its intention, and its trust in him. Suddenly, the device projected another message, this time in clear, glowing text above the deck. The coordinates are only the beginning. You must follow the path, but know this: the knowledge you carry is both a gift and a responsibility. The world may not believe you, but the truth is waiting. Ethan stared at the message, his mind reeling. He had expected mystery, perhaps even danger, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. The ship was alive, it had chosen him, and it had given him instructions that could change everything. He realized that his life had shifted forever. He was no longer just an observer. He was now a participant in a story that had begun long before he was born, a story that the ship had kept hidden until the right person arrived. He spent the rest of the night carefully documenting everything. The coordinates, the glowing messages, the vibrations, and the patterns of light, all were recorded in his notebook and camera. Each detail was precious. Ethan understood that he might never find another opportunity like this. The ship had trusted him, and he would honor that trust. By the time the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Ethan finally stepped off the deck, exhausted but exhilarated. The storm had passed, leaving the air fresh and the waves calm. He looked back at the ship, now quiet and still, yet filled with an invisible energy. He knew that the awakening he had witnessed was only the beginning. The ship had chosen him, and he had accepted the responsibility. Ethan walked home slowly, notebook clutched tightly in his hands. The weight of the ship's message pressed on his mind, but he also felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. The vessel was no longer a relic of the past. It was a living, intelligent presence, guiding him toward something extraordinary. He understood now that the journey ahead would not be easy, that it would demand courage, patience, and intelligence. But he also knew that he could not turn back. As he lay in bed that night, Ethan thought of the glowing coordinates, the vibrating hull, and the holographic figure of the captain. Sleep came fitfully, and when he did dream, the dreams were vivid and strange. He walked on the deck, followed by shadows and lights, tracing symbols, pressing buttons, and hearing whispers of instructions he could barely understand. When he woke, he felt as though the ship had left a part of itself inside his mind, a connection that would not fade. For weeks after the awakening, Ethan returned to the ship with renewed determination. Every visit revealed new mechanisms, new carvings, and new vibrations. He learned to recognize the subtle ways the ship communicated with him, the rhythm of the hum, the flicker of light, the movement of panels. It was as though the vessel was alive in multiple layers, speaking in codes, patterns, and vibrations, all designed for him to understand. Ethan realized that his life had changed completely. The ship had not just reactivated, it had chosen him for a purpose. He was no longer merely exploring history. He was participating in it, bridging the past and the present, carrying a message that could have consequences beyond his imagination. He felt a mix of fear and excitement, knowing that what lay ahead would test him in ways he had never experienced. And yet, amidst the fear, a deep sense of trust grew inside him. The ship had guided him this far, and he trusted that it would continue to reveal its secrets in time. He was ready for the next stage of the journey, aware that the shocking message he had received was only the beginning. Ethan arrived at the shore that Saturday morning with a mix of excitement and nervousness he had never felt before. The sky was clear, and the waves sparkled under the rising sun, reflecting the gold and pink hues of dawn. Today, he knew, would be different. For months, the ship had revealed its mysteries slowly, almost like it was testing him, guiding him, waiting for him to understand. The glowing coordinates, the vibrations, and the messages had all led to this moment. Something important was about to happen, and Ethan felt the weight of responsibility pressing on his chest. Stepping onto the deck, Ethan immediately sensed the energy of the ship. It was stronger now, almost electric, as if the vessel had been waiting for him to arrive at exactly this time. The panels on the deck shifted subtly as he walked, and the familiar hum vibrated through the wooden planks beneath his feet. The carvings along the hull shimmered faintly in the morning light, their patterns forming sequences he had never noticed before. Ethan's heart raced. He had studied every inch of the ship, but now it felt as though the ship itself was calling him forward, guiding him toward something greater. He approached the captain's cabin and noticed the device he had discovered weeks ago. The metal and glass mechanism pulsed with a steady glow, and the vibrations intensified as he neared it. Ethan reached out, hesitating for a moment, then touched the device. Immediately, a holographic figure appeared before him. It was the same captain he had seen in the previous activation, but this time his expression was serious and urgent. "Observer," the captain said, his voice clear and commanding, yet calm. "You have been patient, observant, and worthy of the vessel's trust. The message you carry is vital. The coordinates lead to a place of knowledge, a repository of secrets from those who came before us. This knowledge must be protected, but beware, the world may not understand. The decision you make will shape the future, and the responsibility rests with you alone." Ethan listened intently, trying to absorb every word. The figure pointed toward the glowing coordinates, etched into the deck in the same faint light he had seen before. He memorized them quickly, scribbling them in his notebook as the captain continued. "These coordinates are not merely a location. They are a warning, a key, and a test. The vessel awakens for those who are ready to understand its message. You must choose, reveal the secrets and risk disbelief, ridicule, or danger, or keep them hidden to protect the knowledge until the world is ready. Choose wisely, for the consequences extend far beyond this moment." Ethan's mind raced. He had expected mystery, perhaps even danger, but this was more than he could have imagined. The ship was alive, intelligent, and it had chosen him as a guardian of knowledge that could change the course of events for many people. His thoughts tumbled over themselves. How could he share this without causing panic or skepticism? How could he ensure that the knowledge would be used responsibly? And yet, keeping it hidden felt like ignoring a calling that had been waiting for him his entire life. The captain's figure paused, the glow of the hologram illuminating the cabin. "The choice is yours. The vessel trusts you. Observe carefully, act wisely, and do not falter. The future depends on the decisions you make." With those words, the hologram slowly faded, leaving Ethan alone once more. The device continued to pulse, a steady reminder of the responsibility he now carried. Ethan spent the next several hours exploring the ship, documenting everything meticulously. The glowing symbols, the vibrations, the hidden compartments, and the mechanisms all seemed to respond to his presence. It was as if the vessel itself were guiding him toward understanding, offering its knowledge while testing his patience and dedication. Every note he took, every sketch he made, brought him closer to comprehending the purpose of the ship and the significance of the coordinates. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ethan noticed something remarkable. The carvings along the hull aligned with the position of the sun, casting shadows that formed a pattern leading directly to a hatch he had never seen before. He moved toward it cautiously, his heart pounding. The vibrations under his feet grew stronger, almost like a heartbeat, and the air around him seemed charged with energy. When he opened the hatch, he discovered a hidden chamber beneath the ship, filled with artifacts, maps, and instruments that had clearly been preserved for decades. Each artifact told a story. There were navigational tools unlike any Ethan had studied, charts of lands and waters that were unknown to modern maps, and journals detailing voyages that seemed impossible. Some of the writing described experiments, observations, and discoveries that hinted at advanced knowledge far beyond what was expected for the era. Ethan realized that the ship was not just a vessel. It was a guardian of knowledge, a repository of history, science, and insight that had been preserved for the right observer. And now, he was that observer. Hours passed as he documented everything, photographing, sketching, and writing detailed notes. He felt a mix of exhilaration and responsibility. The ship had trusted him to understand, and he had to honor that trust. The more he studied, the more he realized the magnitude of what he had found. This was not just a historical discovery, it was a message from the past meant to guide the future. As evening approached, Ethan sat on the deck, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The waves glimmered in the fading light, and the ship's hum had softened to a gentle, steady rhythm. He thought about the captain's words, the coordinates, and the hidden knowledge beneath the deck. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on him. Sharing this information could change lives, but it could also cause fear, misunderstanding, or misuse. Keeping it secret could protect it, but it might also delay discoveries that could benefit many. Ethan took a deep breath. He knew what he had to do. First, he would study and understand the knowledge fully, ensuring that he could interpret it correctly. Then, he would decide how and when to share it, carefully weighing the consequences. He realized that the ship's message was not just about discovery. It was about responsibility, trust, and the careful handling of powerful information. That night, Ethan camped near the ship, unable to leave. The moonlight cast silvery reflections across the deck, illuminating the carvings and glowing coordinates. The vibrations of the ship continued, steady and reassuring. He felt a deep connection, as though the vessel had become a partner, guiding him through the unknown. Sleep came slowly, and when he did dream, the visions were vivid. Journeys across uncharted waters, strange lands filled with mysteries, and a sense of purpose that he had never known before. The following weeks were filled with careful observation, study, and preparation. Ethan returned to the ship every day, documenting, analyzing, and trying to understand the patterns of communication. The ship revealed more secrets gradually, hidden compartments, additional carvings, and instruments that responded to his touch. Each discovery deepened his understanding and strengthened the bond he felt with the vessel. Ethan also began considering how to share the knowledge responsibly. He researched historical accounts, consulted trusted experts in secrecy, and prepared a plan to ensure the information would be protected until the right moment. He realized that the ship's message was not just about what it revealed. It was about how the knowledge would be used and understood. He felt the weight of this responsibility keenly, knowing that one mistake could have serious consequences. One night, as the sky turned a deep indigo and stars reflected on the calm water, Ethan climbed to the deck and ran his hand along the carvings. The hum of the ship pulsed gently under his fingertips, almost like a heartbeat. He whispered softly, "I understand. I will protect the knowledge. I will honor your trust." The air seemed to shimmer slightly, the lights along the hull flickering in acknowledgement. For the first time, Ethan felt a sense of completion, of purpose, and of connection with something far greater than himself. Ethan realized that the journey was not over. The ship had awakened him, revealed its secrets, and entrusted him with knowledge that could shape the future. But the next steps, the decision of how to act, how to protect the information, and how to share it responsibly, were now his to make. He understood that he was no longer simply an observer. He was a guardian, a messenger, and a participant in a story that transcended time. As he finally left the ship that night, notebook and photographs in hand, Ethan looked back one last time. The vessel was quiet now, still, yet filled with a silent energy that seemed to watch over him. He felt a deep gratitude and reverence. The ship had chosen him, revealed its truth, and trusted him with its legacy. And now he would honor that trust, knowing that his life had been changed forever, and that the story of the ship was only beginning through him. Ethan walked along the shore, the waves gently brushing against his feet, thinking about the responsibility he now carried. He knew that some secrets were too powerful to rush, too important to reveal carelessly. Yet he also understood that knowledge, when handled wisely, could illuminate paths that were once hidden. He vowed to protect the ship, its secrets, and the message it had entrusted to him until the world was ready. As the night deepened, Ethan returned home, exhausted but filled with purpose. He placed his notes and photographs carefully on his desk, reviewing each detail, each pattern, each piece of evidence. He knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, but he was ready. The ship had awakened him for a reason, and he would follow its guidance, honor its trust, and embrace the responsibility it had chosen for him. The story ended not with closure, but with the promise of discovery, responsibility, and the unfolding of mysteries that could change the world. The ship remained on the shore, silent yet alive, waiting patiently for the next stage, for the next moment, and for Ethan's continued journey as its observer, protector, and messenger.